Being able to say no is hard. All taught as just local people, period, that we're supposed to be giving. The act of being selfless is, supposedly a badge of honor. Okay, but not if you can't take care of yourself.
Absolutely love this woman. I'm going to give her little bio here because she's accomplished so much, and she's younger than me. So Dr. Joanna is a dedicated healthcare professional. She has over 30 years of experience in the medical field. She's the owner of EMI Clinics. It's a full-service med spa in Hilo. Dr. Smith combines her extensive clinical experience with a passion for helping individuals achieve optimal wellness and self-confidence together. Her journey began in healthcare in 1993 when she earned her Associate of Science degree in radiologic technology from Kapiolani Community College. She later expanded her skill set by graduating from Makana Academy of Aesthetics and becoming a licensed esthetician, which is where her and I met. Dr. Smith's commitment to lifelong learning has been a cornerstone of her career as she continually pursues education to stay at the forefront of the latest treatments, procedures, safety protocols, and trends in both medical and aesthetics fields. I can attest to this. She's on it. She knows all of her stuff. Dr. Smith furthered her education with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from HPU and a dual, get this now, a dual master's in nursing and an MBA in business administration, excuse me, a master's in business administration from the University of Phoenix and a doctorate in nursing practice. She has a DNP from the University of Hawaii at Hilo. She's a certified laser technician, holds a Six Sigma green belt, and a strong foundation in health information technology. Her career spans over 2 decades, or 20 years, 2 decades of progressive roles in clinics, private practice, medical flight companies, where she honed her skills for personalized patient care. In 2018, she founded EMI Clinics, named in the honor of her late father's fishing boat, EMI Ia, which is a fish seeker, reflecting her deep connection to the Big Island and its community. A lifelong advocate for self-care and self-love, Dr. Smith is committed to empowering her patients through quality care, whether they seek medical, aesthetic, or wellness solutions. She's born and raised on the Big Island, and she remains deeply rooted in her community and culture, and she's driven by a mission to support and uplift those she serves. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Joanna Smith, a true champion of holistic health and wellness, to today's discussion on self-care and self-love. Woo!
Thank you,
Thank,
Jonathan.
of course,
So nice to
basic.
meet everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I was honored that Jonathan asked me to speak tonight. Um, the subject matter, which I have been a part of for at least the last 10 years, of just trying to find a balance between aesthetics, self-care, and healthcare, and combining all of them together in a way that is sustainable in anyone's lifestyle. So Jonathan was kind enough to provide me with a list of questions that he thought could help guide me through some of the talks that we would have tonight. And one of the first questions he asked was, what inspired me to start IMAD clinics and self-care through the Medi Spa? Well, many years ago, I had my own struggles with skin. Specifically, I suffered from melasma after having my last child. And melasma is a really difficult skin condition to treat. It usually takes years and a number of different therapies to get it done. What troubled me was that it was not a condition that I could treat easily in Hilo. I had to fly away, whether that was to clinics over on Oahu, or I would have to drive to the other side of the island, some 2 hours away, to just have a decent dermatologist who could treat my condition. So, what I really wanted to do was to be able to provide those similar services right here in Hilo, where people didn't have to fly away or drive so far to get the same kind of treatments that I had sought myself for years. And by doing that, I also wanted to make sure that I provided a very robust menu of services that could treat everything from the inside out. So the Integrated Medicine Institute, which we lovingly refer to as IMI or EMI, was a practice that uses three forms of medical application. So we have the healthcare arm where I can see people for common colds, do some suture removals, things of that nature. And then we have the wellness arm where we offer things like IVs, the intramuscular injections for vitamin therapy, skincare supplements, things of that nature, which I get most of my products from the company that Jonathan introduced me to, and the aesthetic line where we do much of what everyone's familiar with now: injections, chemical peels, facials, laser therapies, things of that nature. So now we have a full service med spa available in Hilo that people have really resonated with and have been taking advantage of some of those types of procedures and treatments that we offer. The second question that Jonathan asked was, how was my journey as a business owner shaped my personal view on self love? It was a hard lesson, I'm not going to lie, because it's very easy to get caught up in the business and have that be all encompassing, because it does require so much of your time, which meant I wasn't taking care of myself in the beginning. For at least the first 2 to 3 years, I spent hours on end in the clinic just trying to build out systems, automate things, train and retrain staff. I wasn't really giving myself the kind of self care that I was delivering to my patients, which was just so mind blowing. After a while, when I got to the point of near burnout, that's when I realized I can't supply my clients with great self care until I take care of myself. Really being able to put yourself first and finding some balance between being a business owner, or even if you're an employee of another company, you want to make sure that you carve out that time for yourself so that you can be well enough to take care of the ones around you. One of the biggest challenges that I found as a business woman, and this is again just my own humble opinion on the matter, women in business tend to face a lot more challenges or different challenges than what men would in terms of having more doubters. There's a lot of people that doubt women and their capabilities in being able to build, let alone sustain a business. And then when you do have a business that is sustainable and successful, then there's always a few more haters that women have than that men don't have to necessarily deal with. And then when you throw it into the mix where women have a lot more familial responsibilities than men do, not just with children, but even with our own parents or grandparents when they're not well. It's usually the daughter or the female in the family that ends up doing most of the heavy lifting. So men in business don't typically have those kinds of challenges, which makes it much harder for women to be able to be successful in business too. So this makes it even more important that we allow ourselves the grace to be able to give ourselves some self-love as well.
Hey, Dr.
And
Joe,
yes,
what were some of the signs that you exhibited what made you realize, oh shit, I'm a part of my French, but I'm not taking care of myself? And I'm taking better care of my clients and patients than I am of myself. What were some of the things that you went through, or things that happened to you that made you realize I got to start changing?
I mean, one of the first signs was just fatigue, and I knew it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that you're putting too much into the business when you're not leaving your office until 11, 12, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning. And there were two occasions, which I'm not proud of, but two occasions where I actually spent almost 24 hours at the office, drove home, picked up my daughter, took her to school, took a shower, and went right back to the clinic because it was just so demanding. And I knew it was happening, but if you continue to let that happen, it just gets worse. The fatigue for sure, just the number of hours that I was spending, and then there was also the change in overall attitude. I'm already very short-tempered as it is, but it was even worse. Very short with the family, um, the partner for sure. So it there were multiple signs that was telling me I really needed to adjust my lifestyle and my schedule to make it more sustainable.
Was this a gradual change? Did you have like a sudden change? I'm not sure what your journey was, but I know for some people, like hitting rock bottom, or just anxiety, like a panic attack, or was it something that you just slowly had to change? And then what was the reaction of those or people around you when you had to change because for your own self preservation?
Multifaceted answer for you. So first and foremost, when I recognized it, the need for change was immediate, but I also knew that I couldn't make a huge change in a short period of time. It had to be a slow process. I'm always been a planner. I've always been one that can foresee what's needed and then put together actionable tasks that would get me to the overall goal. Of course, I knew I needed time for myself. I would stay at work no longer than 10 o'clock anymore. So if there was things that were left undone, I simply left a list and carried it over to the next day. And if the list got longer, oh well. I knew I wasn't going to die if I didn't get every single thing done on the list, but I had to train myself to not want to or perseverate and fixate about finishing my to-do list for the day. So that was step number one. Step number two was to carve out actual time in my work week where I would allow myself to do absolutely nothing. No going into the office, no answering emails, no answering text messages or, any of my DMs on Instagram or my social platforms. I ignored everything on Sundays. Um there was no pulling me away from my relaxation or my time with my family. So Sundays are a must, or I should say it's a non-negotiable.
How was that? Because as
It
me, it's tied to
was
my phone. Like, and I almost feel guilty sometimes that I'm not quote unquote working because there's so many things that has quote unquote have to get done. So many of us think that rest is not essential, that it's a luxury, for us to be self-care kind of a stuff. So what I hear you saying is it's not a luxury. It's actually, it should be a mandate that we do that because that's how we
yes.
function best. Well, in your medical experience and personal experience, why is that so?
Well, I mean, when you don't get enough rest, you physically can't function at your highest utility that you normally do when you do have a full round of rest or when you have that recovery period. It's the same theory even in the gym. I mean, you're supposed to have a rest day and you're supposed to have a cycle of things that you do in the gym. You don't do legs every day all day. You don't do arms every day all day. You have a rotation, so that's how I look at my life as well. I have a rotation of time. From this time to this time, it's work. From this time to this time, it's family. From this time to this time, it's, spiritual awareness. Whatever it is that you do, you want to make sure that you have those cycles and you have those rest periods in between. You can't just go hard the entire time. It doesn't work.
When you do go hard all the time, is that where you get that overwhelm, the burnout, basically the attitude changes, things like that? We get short tempered. You and I
Yes.
know each other. We're the same. I do the same
Hmm.
thing, right? When we get overwhelmed, we've seen each other at that state. What for some of the people you mentioned earlier, for women, and I see this too. Most of the people that have been in my business are women, and my experience has been that just overwhelmed with responsibilities and sometimes self-imposed responsibilities as well. And don't know when to create a boundary to say, hey, this is what I need first to be able to do that. Any help and suggestions on how women especially can do that, how they can create that boundary within their families or for other people so that they get that self-care and self-love?
Being able to say no is hard for a lot of people already, let alone from what my perspective is within the islands. We're all taught as just local people, period, let alone being women, that we're supposed to be giving and we're supposed to be taking care of one another. And, the act of being selfless is, supposedly a badge of honor. Okay, but not if you can't take care of yourself and if you can't take care of the person because you haven't taken care of yourself. So, um, really being able to be comfortable with saying no or setting the limitations up from the get-go. For example, I mean, this doesn't apply to family per se, but within the office as well, in the first 2 to 3 years of the practice, a lot of people will call and they'll want maybe a later appointment, or can you stay for just another 15 minutes, or would you mind coming in on a Saturday? And it is now a straight no, more so because it was too many people asking for too many favors, or too many of them trying to push the envelope and extend beyond the boundaries that I set for myself with work, because this is my hometown. Everybody's my friend, my neighbor, my cousin, my high school, what have you. So if I continued to do that, it would be all 3,000 patients, and that's crazy. I can't possibly service them like that. The same limits with my phone. If you're texting me about a personal issue, then fine. But if you're texting me because you want to get on my schedule, I have staff for that. There's a reason I have staff, because if I was able to do it all, I wouldn't be paying somebody to do it. So I've had to really put my foot down about that stuff. Or when they try to DM me through Instagram, I'm like, no, I'm not answering any of those questions on my personal Instagram. You can contact us at the clinic. My personal is for my personal. And it took a while. It felt like I was trying to turn the Titanic with a paddle, but it happened. It wasn't overnight, but it did ultimately happen. So just being very clear with what your boundaries are is the first step. The second step is sticking to them, because they
Yeah.
will continue to push and they'll continue to ask. And, unless you really stick to your guns, they will push those boundaries until they get what they want.
I'm gonna butt in real quick. I have a great question, and it looks like it's from Luana. So she's saying, "Aloha, Dr. Joe. What would you say to a patient or a client, or even just a friend who is not a planner or who is unorganized and or feels like they're a procrastinator? What do you think would be the first step to setting these boundaries or creating that schedule that you were mentioning of setting those block times? What do you think would be that first step for that type of person?"
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is that possibly you have someone in your life that you may plan things with, and maybe they're always late, or they're never prepared, or they make what ultimately is an excuse for not being able to meet the expectation that they or both of you had set for them. When it comes to those kinds of people, whether it's friends, family, or with the office, I set very clear boundaries. And if they cross that the first time, they get a warning of sorts. So it's in our policy within the clinic. If you are 5 to 10 minutes late, you will automatically be rescheduled. We'll waive the late fee for the first offense. After the second, a $50 fee will be applied. After the third, you will be discharged from the clinic. And I stick to that all the way through. I have let go a few patients. I can still count them on two hands since 2017. So that's not too bad. Most of the people will understand that we're dead serious about that policy.
Yeah.
And it's because it's that important to the clinic, not just from a respect point of view, but when you miss an appointment in my office, that's not just missing an appointment and I'm missing out on potential revenue. It's an actual loss, because for every hour that this door is open, it costs me $200 just to be in business, because I have
Mm.
to pay for the lights, I have to pay for the electronic medical record, I have to pay for the little girl who answers the phone, I have to pay for the rent that, this office is in. So when you miss an appointment with me, that's not just a revenue loss. You are costing me money by not showing up to my clinic. So I am dead serious about my
Mhm.
policies. And when you look at it from a business perspective, I always educate people that I am not the clinic. The clinic is its own entity. I work for the clinic when I'm here as a physician or as a doctor or as a medical provider. So not only does the clinic lose out on what overhead capital that's fixed, they also
Mhm.
lose out on paying me, because somebody had to be here to provide that service. And if you don't show up, and if I were another provider, I'm not going to sit here and just not get paid. I came in to do my job. And if
Right.
that person didn't show up, that's not my fault. I'm still here. I'm still ready to provide the service that I was hired to do. I deserve to get paid. So just one 15-minute missed appointment cost the clinic over $600. That's not fair to me. I treat that the same way when it comes to my family and my friends. If you don't show up to lunch, like if I've planned, I've taken time out of my day because I
Mm-hmm.
love you enough that I want to spend time with you, and you don't show up on time, sure, 10, 15 minutes, I might forgive. But I've literally had one of my very best friends not show up for a half an hour. She showed up probably 45 minutes after, but I already left. I
I
got
would
up
have
from the
too.
table and I left. And that's not the first time that I've done that to her. The second time was when we were supposed to go out to Costco just to do a grocery run. And we were
Mm-hmm.
supposed to meet at my house at 9 because Costco doesn't open until 10. And
Right.
we were going to stop off and, grab coffee and what have you. But when she was not there at 9:10, I left without her.
What it sounds like is boundaries is not about being like that person or having attitude. It's literally self-care to yourself. So
Mhm.
setting these boundaries is allowing yourself to care for yourself,
Yes.
right?
And
It's
just
like
knowing ahead
self-respect.
of time
Equals.
that she has this behavior pattern. I don't
Mm-hmm.
allow myself to get upset about it. I just take my time to do myself. So I had
Yeah.
my lunch. You weren't here, so see you later.
Yeah.
I paid for my bill, and the
Yeah.
table's done. I don't know if you're going to have lunch, but that's not on me anymore.
Right.
That's your behavior. So after that second time, we just don't invite her to any of the things that we're doing. If she hears about it, you want to bring yourself along, great. If you show up on time, that's fine. But we don't put those parameters on her anymore. That's just an expectation. But again, we don't invest in it. So there's the same thing with the patients that don't show up. We're not investing in you anymore. You're discharged. Thank you.
Dr. Joe, you and I have been friends for a long time, and that's one of the things that I love about you is you have clear boundaries. Self-respect to me, it sounds like what you're saying. Self-respect for yourself equals self-care and self-love.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of women have a hard time society expectations or personal expectations. Like, I mean, you and I both know that some people have not been kind to you because of your stance, because you are strong-willed and a talented, strong woman person as a woman, and you said societal expectations. So some people get confused with when you're standing up for yourself. Like if I, as a man, say the things that you say, people might not blink twice and think, okay, yeah, because that's important to him. But you say that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's a bitch, or she's a this, or she's a that. So I
Yes.
think a lot of women misconstrue this that self-care, self-love, and self-respect to me is a part of that self-care and that self-love. And all around, not just women, but anybody. How do you address that when people when they can't see that connection there and they're treated differently?
I'm gonna back up just a hair
Okay.
with because I want to finish the answer to Luana's question, because the
Okay.
second half of Luana's question was how do you help people that are maybe not as organized as you would be? And my answer to that is the same thing that I told this same friend. If we were a priority and if our time was a priority, you would make it your priority to be organized and to be on time. So the person who isn't organized because they don't have the skill. Because I look at it from two perspectives. You have to find where the ill is, where that sickness is. Is the ill in the skill, or is the ill in the will?
Mm.
Because you can teach skill. You can teach skill all day long. There are different methods of showing someone how to do something. But if they don't have any will to make that change, there's nothing you can do to help them. Find
Well,
the ill.
I'm going to adopt that now. Find the ill. It's either in the skill or the will. And the skill we can help with, but the will, the best thing we can do is let them go and let them on their own journey.
Yeah,
Because
you can't swing a book in an Amazon store, and you can't swing a cat and not hit a book that doesn't help you to learn how to organize yourself. I
mm,
mean, there's so many programs and so many methods of helping people to become more organized. Much of them are digital now. So it's not a matter of not being able to be organized. You have to have the will to want to be organized.
mm,
I have heard this over and over and over again. I don't have time
Mm.
to give myself self care. I don't have time to go get that massage. I don't have time to read that book. I don't have time to do that mask. I don't have time to put that extra hour on my alarm so that I can sleep a little bit longer. All the excuses in the world. And it's the same thing. If it's not a priority, you're not going to make it a priority. You have to make that a priority. If it's that important, which self care should be, because you can't do what you're supposed to do if you yourself are not capable. And your capabilities all lie in self care and the ability to recover. You have to be able to fill your cup because you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's funny you mentioned that, because that's exactly what our last speaker last week said. It was about making sure that you got something in that cup before you give it to other people. So that you mentioned that, I mean, that's pretty powerful for sure. I interrupted you when I asked the question about like being a man versus a woman and
Oh yes,
self-respect and things
yes.
like that. If you don't mind answering that.
So I it was a really long journey for me to be able to one accept that as fact. I am my dad's daughter through and through, which he basically raised me to be like him in so many ways. And in some ways, I'm like my mother as well, but I'm definitely not as soft as she was. And like my father, he was a man of efficiency, great efficiency. So he was never one to be verbose when explaining things. If he could tell you in 5 words, one sentence, what someone else would tell you in a paragraph, that's what he's going to do. He will never tiptoe through the tulips just so that you can be more comfortable with the underlying message. And I'm sorry, I am gonna cuss a little bit, but he would say, if it's a shit sandwich, it's a shit sandwich. It doesn't matter if you deliver it on a silver platter with parsley, it's still gonna be a shit sandwich. All my childhood long, I practiced the same thing. But coming from a female, which I didn't realize until I was in high school, that it came off much differently. The guy next to me could say the same thing and it would land better. But if it came from my mouth, it would be offensive. And I'd sit there like, what? I don't understand. I'm just stating facts. What's the problem with facts? But, in actuality, it's the delivery. So it took a lot of time, a lot of classes in management and leadership to help buffer some of the abrasiveness that people would perceive, even if it wasn't intended that way. At the end of the day, it's not about the deliverer of the message, it's the recipient. And if the recipient sees it differently from the deliverer, at the end, your message is not being received the way that you intended it. So the communication is completely broken. So it was up to me to learn how to communicate a little softer.
Mm. So now you're talking leadership skills,
Yes.
really. And how does leadership skills tie into self-care and self-love, both from the leader's perspective and from the, for lack of a better word, the employee or the person that the leader is leading?
Well, because at the end of the day, it would be frustrating to me, and maybe not as much to the people within my environment. So if I'm the only one frustrated by the situation because you're not hearing what I'm saying or you're not getting my message the way I intend it to be, then it's up to me to make that change. And that's where the self-love comes in, because then I take away that added frustration that I had from the situation before. So when you're doing your own self improvement, when you are giving yourself the tools and the knowledge acquisition that's necessary to remove some of the barriers and some of the frustrations that you may have in your life, that is self love. That
Mm.
is self care.
I'll be honest, that's a not a very popular interpretation of
Of
leadership
course
and things
not.
like that.
It's so much easier if they change.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
me? But still, whether it's their change or my change, the end result's the same. The frustration goes away. So why not take that into my own hands? Why not change the narrative and make the situation better on my own? Why depend on someone else?
I like that. We have a question from Cheryl. What do you say about how someone can practice self-care while also struggling with people pleasing?
That's not uncommon either. Um, when you have a person that's a nurturer, basically that's what people pleasers are. You're nurturing. You want everyone around you to hold hands, sing kumbaya, be happy, and all of this. But again, we have to remember that's just not possible, and it's surely not sustainable. So you really have to look at the root cause, if I may. So just imagine in your head that you're standing on the side of a river and there's a bunch of drowning babies that are coming by, and you're saving one at a time because you feel, we would all feel the need to make a difference, to save a life, to help, someone who's not able to help themselves. But if you stay there and you continue to just save baby after baby after baby after baby, sooner or later you're going to be fatigued and you're not going to be able to swim out there and save the next baby. So why stand there and try to save the babies instead of going upstream and see what's causing all these babies to drown in the first place? You know,
Oh,
and part of that is taking yourself out of the situation so that you can be well enough to figure that out in the first place. Because these people that continue to have needs or that you continue to need to please, those needs are not going to go away. They're just going to keep flooding and flooding and flooding you with more. I need more. I need more. I need more. I need more. That's human nature. But if you can help them to understand how they can meet their own needs without taking away from you, that's where the power comes from. And then you can really focus on yourself. But again, if you don't allow yourself the time to take care of you first, you're going to drown along with those babies.
people that know me, I get a chicken skin, which means that's the divine telling me that we're on the right path and that this needs to be delivered. Because you're really speaking to self-respect. You really
Yes.
are, and how self-respect is tied to self-love. And a lot of people, I've said it in this conversation and before with other people that that's a hard thing. Like, where does self-respect and selfishness, like, where's that fine line? Like, what's me being selfish, being self-respecting of myself, when, and I think people don't understand, or we have a hard time as human beings seeing how people treat us the way that, what is the phrase? I can't think of the word, but like if you want, I'll use an example for you. You talked to one of our mutual friends, Rowanna, about
Yes.
business, and you told her basically, bottom line, girl, why are you charging this when it doesn't even cover your costs? And what is your value? So now this is specifically, we're talking about value, about money wise, like you allured to, but what about like self value and self dignity and self respect, having to do with self love and self care? How do you what would you say to your patients, or what do you say to others, or the journey that you went through how do you connect those two?
So and it's not just about a connection. So again, I'm going to back up just a
Okay.
little bit
Okay.
and kind of take part in Cheryl's question,
Okay.
about people pleasing. Sometimes you have to look at yourself and ask yourself why it is that you feel this need to please them. Because for some people, I'm not saying everyone, I have someone in my life that's very close to me who does this all the time. He tends to help people who don't necessarily reciprocate or see the value in what he's doing for the mere purpose of being able to go, I'm a good guy. I did that. So sometimes being that person who is constantly filling other people's needs is filling their need to be needed in the first place. So if that's not the case, then everything that I said previously applies. But you have to do that self-examination first, because if you are the people pleaser and that makes you feel good, then I guess in some sense you are giving in to your value. That's what you value. You value feeling good about yourself. You value knowing that you've, done something honorable. Then great. That is giving yourself value. But if it's just taking from you and if it's not fulfilling you in any shape or form, then you aren't valuing yourself.
Mm.
So you have to recognize that first before you can make the link to everything else around you.
I can speak from personal experience. For what I do as a coach, when I share this a lot, like people don't understand. They're like, "Oh, you work so hard," and I am, because for me, the value that I have in helping other people know that they can do more and be more, that drives me. I don't get drained, but I do know other people, and I hear things such as, "Well, they keep taking and taking and taking." I give them a little bit, they keep taking. I get overwhelmed, they get tired. So is that what you're talking about? The difference in how you feel after you help people, or okay?
Yep.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Real
Yes,
quick, real quick. I have another question that just came up from April. She asked, you mentioned fatigue as a symptom of burnout. What are some other symptoms that may signal burnout?
Oh Lord, my weight gain was the next one. It
oh,
was almost overnight, and it was very easy to blame a few things. I blamed COVID because we were knee deep in lockdown at the time. I blamed the ease of DoorDash and express waiters. And I blamed my injuries, which I did have, two ankle injuries. And then I finally came to realize that it's because I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not prioritizing my health and wellness. I'm not prioritizing my nutrition. So, in addition to the weight, in addition to the fatigue, there's also the inability to really truly focus on the tasks at hand. I'm a very good and always have been a good multitasker, but there were moments where instead of being focused enough to be able to carry out three things at once, I would have to pause and tell myself, what was I just doing? What did I just say? Or, having to leave post-it notes everywhere in order for me to be able to have the same kind of focus I had when I was well rested.
mm. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Dr. Joe, because I'm gonna put April on the spot. We just talked about that this afternoon. That exact thing about having to remind ourselves, walking away from something and then coming back and going, "What the heck did I just do?" And having to put post-it notes everywhere to remind ourselves. I know we've got about 10 more minutes. Is there anybody have any other questions before we get to our five last questions that we always ask all of our guests? Or Dr. Joe, do you have anything that you want to share that we didn't cover?
Mostly that a lot of people have the misconception that self-care is directly related to something that's aesthetic, so the facials, the massages, the external improvement. But in reality, self-care is so much more than that. It's being able to eat healthy so that you feel healthy. And that's part of self-care, which I learned from the enormous weight gain that I had during that time period. And just changing my diet, my wellness practices, and the physical exercise that I've integrated into my life again, I feel like the old Joanna, the one that was the athlete in high school and after college, and the person that was able to use those kinds of activities to continue with my social circle. Now I can participate in things that I hadn't been participating in before. So that interpersonal relationship, that communication, because human beings are supposed to communicate, they're supposed to spend time together. No one is supposed to operate in a silo. That's all part of self-care. Being able to spend time, very specific time in my day to educate myself, whether that's about mental mindset, finances, business, academia, just feeding my brain the same way that I feed my body, which my brain has always had the most attention in my life. I've always focused on doing the things that bettered my knowledge, but I would lose sight of the other things. So, being able to pencil date nights, being able to pencil in dinners with the parents when my parents were alive, making sure that I have at least one girls' night out a month, which isn't much really, but it is on the calendar. My next one's
Mm.
coming up on Monday, by the way. So, those are all important parts of self care.
Wow. You have so much the drowning babies thing. Like that I actually that struck me. I had to like that was like a slap because I'd probably be the person I was thinking the drowning babies and then go rest a little bit and get somebody else to help me with the drowning babies. Duh. Go upstream and see what the fuck is the problem. Why are drowning babies being dropped in the water or babies being dropped in the water? Like that analogy right there is huge for me. Um, Find the ill, tiptoe through the tulips, the serving of poop on the platter. I mean, all these little sayings, acronyms, but they really do get us to think differently about ourselves, think differently about self care and self love. And I really appreciate the person that you are and coming on board and giving this talk for our few. We have about 15 people that are here, and I know we're going to be sharing this throughout social media. And so the people lives that you're going to affect, I am genuinely grateful for that, Dr. Joe, because you and I have been friends for a year, and I've always looked up to you, not just professionally but personally. And we've known each other, have gone through some things separately but together, and the respect that I have you has never faded. And that's one thing that I love about you is that you are a manawahine. Like you're just there's nothing that just stops you, and you set your mind to things and you get it accomplished with self-respect for sure. Christina, you have those last five. Is there how can people reach you, Dr. Joe, real fast before we get to those five questions?
You do have my email, right? That's probably the easiest because
Okay.
nobody can get in touch with me during the day via text or phone
What
call.
is the what is it EME clinics? What is the website that you have? What's a good or
I am
phone
my
number?
clinics.
Okay, I am
I'm
my clinics.
Yep, and the phone number here is 808-657-4644.
657-4644, right over there in Hilo, correct?
Yes.
And are you still planning on opening up other clinics as well? Was that in the works? I can't remember.
We are, we have a letter of intent to occupy for a building that is currently non-existent
Oh,
over
okay.
in Waikoloa. So the Waikoloa Plaza has a number of buildings that have occupants fully occupied, even though some of them look empty, it's just a matter of being built out. And each of those modules have 4 bays total. So what they do is they preemptively will have these letters of intent to occupy for each bay, and they have to have all 4 bays occupied before they'll erect the building.
Oh
So
wow.
the one that I'm currently on contract for is still missing a fourth bay
Okay.
occupant. So as soon as that one is signed, sealed, and delivered, they'll start to erect the building.
Awesome. Awesome. That, Christina, I'm just gonna say I love your answer, Dr. Joe, because that shows the businesswoman in you. And you know I love anything that's about business. So I appreciate that. Christina, what are Dr. Joe's final questions before we say goodbye to everybody? We've got about 4 more minutes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, this is gonna be like your rapid fire questions, all right, Dr. Joe?
Sure.
First one here. If you could sit with your 20-year-old self for 5 minutes, what would you say to yourself?
Girl, calm down.
Number two, what's a moment in your life where you felt truly seen and truly understood, and by whom?
There were so many moments, but it was always my father. Always. He he just knew me so well and never failed to make me feel valued. Always.
That's awesome. All right, number three, what lesson has life taught you the hard way, but you are grateful for now?
Oh, trust for sure. Trust has always been an issue for me, and letting down the walls for the right people has been life changing for me. Yes, trust can be a problem for some people, but a lot of times your ano, your soul, your heart will tell you when it's okay. And even if it's not, it's still a lesson learned. You'll never do it again.
Absolutely. All right, number 4. If you could gift every young person in Hawaii one mindset shift, what would it be?
Believing in yourself. More than anything else, believing in yourself and never, ever let anyone take that belief away.
That is definitely powerful, especially that last part, because you hear people say you got to believe in yourself all the time. You know, you hear that everywhere, but to add that on where you want to tell them, don't let anyone else take it away. That's definitely impactful. Number 5 and final question. When your time here is done, what's the impact you hope that you've made here in the world?
You know, I want to make a difference every day, even if it's a small difference. For example, I'm taking on interns, which are going to cost me time and money because they'll slow me down, but the ripple effect that it'll have across time, these 3 kids are going to want to help the next person, and just learning to pay it forward. So not necessarily one specific thing to be remembered for, but the act of paying it forward is what I would love to be remembered for, because I never forget who's done for me, always.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's chicken
Awesome.
skin right there. Like for real. That's probably, I always say talk about God's gift, what He gave you, and your gift is to give that to others. And I think that frames up exactly who you are, Dr. Joanna. I thank everyone's time this evening. It is 9 o'clock. We like to keep a tight schedule too, for respect for all of us. I know it's late for me, past my bedtime. Dr. Joanna, I appreciate you being here this evening. Can our volunteers and staff stay? And then Dr. Joanna, if you don't mind staying staying online as well. We'll do a little
Yes.
brief wrap up and questions and things like that. But for everybody that's here, this is your first time, we really appreciate you coming. Please come back. We're here every Thursday, 8 p.m. Next week, we have actually Andrew Ogata, who is the marketing person for Triple HRC, which is Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Unit. So he's going to be talking about self-care and how that shows up for people. And so he's one of my friends, and he's a hilarious guy, but he's got so much mana'o to share. Young guy and a makeup artist. If you ever see a guy with a bright yellow hair, that's him. Okay, that's the guy with the spiky bright yellow hair. That's Andrew. So I appreciate everyone's time and have a great evening. Aloha, everyone. Thank you, Christina.
Aloha.